June 19th, 1965. The temperature overpowering. Only minutes left. The dreams of victory merge with the heat of excitement.
It's the first year that Ford's really been serious about Le Mans.
Out onto the straight for the first time and sort of wonder who's up ahead there. I can see the Chaparral fairly well ahead.
I never would have guessed the business would grow to this. And people always say, well, you know, did you ever expect it to be this size? And no, I didn't. I mean, when I started the business, it was something I just wanted to do. And I never thought that this would be an industry that's grown to its size. I didn't think cars were an art form, which I believe today they are. To me, it was just used cars, collector cars that were really interesting and cool. All I wanted to do was do really cool restoration stuff. So if I saw something in a magazine that was, you know, a concourse restoration, I remember going to those events, photographing the heck out of the best cars, talking to the guys that restored the best cars, and trying to get educated. And you keep taking it one level more. My name's Peter Klutt. I started Legendary Motorcar in 1985. It actually started as the Shelby shop. That was the first name, and it wasn't until I got a cease and desist letter from Carol Shelby that we changed the name to Legendary Motorcar, more generic name. But really it started when I was 15 years old. I started fixing cars in my dad's driveway. It was really trial and error, learning how to do cars. I had my dad to teach me basic welding and some basic body work. He wasn't a painter at all, so that was just really trial and error. My first car was a 71 Mach 1, so we painted it and put the hood stripe on it and everything like that, and put a set of wheels on it. And it was a different era. This was, you know, the mid-70s now. Long story short, I paid $200 for the car. I had maybe $800 in it, and I sold it for $2,100. And the light bulb went off, and I thought, this is way better than delivering newspapers, you know, and it was fun and I really enjoyed it. So after selling that first car, I just kept looking out for another car. And the next one was a little 65 Mustang that I did up like a 66 Hertz car. And really a lot of the early learning was just doing things that I thought were cool. But it's like anything, you start with zero knowledge and you get excited about it, and then you read about it, and then you try it and you fail. But every time we failed, or I failed, I would learn something, or I would go to the guy that knew how to do it. And I think that was the fun part, was learning something new, trying something, it not working, trying something different. As far as restoring cars today, I think one of the things that I really enjoy about it is you really learn about a car if you take it apart and put it back together. And I physically don't take them apart and put them back together anymore, but I'm around it all the time. I'll walk through the back shop 10 times a day. And when it comes apart and you see where all the serial numbers are, or you see, you know, where the bad parts are, where cars tend to rust, or where they're prone to things happening, you know, and after you do a couple of cars, you see the weak points and the strengths of cars. So now when you're buying cars or looking at cars at auction, it's the place you go to right away. You look at the weak points and go, oh, you know, 8 out of the 10 cars that we looked at had rust in this area, so that's the first place we go. So you really learn the car when you take it apart. But when you take it apart too, you find out what's cool and what's not. You know, you take apart something like the Gullwing we're doing right now, and you strip off the body, you know, you take it off, the chassis basically, and you see a chassis that's built like a race car chassis or built like a plane would have been built back in that era. The whole thing weighs 150 pounds. It's really well triangulated. It's got a big section depth, which makes it really rigid. So you can see how in the 50s, it was pretty cutting edge. The mechanics of that car, a dry sump engine, fuel injection, the motor tilted on the side to get the center of gravity lower and to get the clearance for the hood. The guys back then were really brilliant engineers. It seems primitive by today's standards, but if you get back to the basics, they were making the stuff light, they were making it rigid, they were putting the CG really down low, they were doing all the things that everybody tries to do today without the same technology. The TRC is, always thought it was one of the prettiest cars ever built. And the 250 Testarossa, it's iconic. It won Le Mans, especially the pontoon fender car, has the iconic fender. But if you take pure aesthetics and clean lines, I think it's one of the prettiest Ferraris ever built. So it's something that we've always wanted to own. We were lucky enough to buy that car. It needed to be put back into its what I call the proper livery. Is when it raced in 57 at Le Mans, it was in that blue livery. But I think what's really interesting about those 50s Ferraris is everything back in that era was big and boxy, but they had just really good looking cars. And I think that's one of the criteria that I go on when we're buying great cars is, and again, I'm stealing this from another buddy of mine that says the car has to be a good looking car. GT40, like the white lightweight car, which is different than the prototype. So that's the last of the era where it probably the most sophisticated of the Mark I's, where it had, the Gurney Eagle motor, it had the big wheels and tires, it had the ventilated discs, it had the aluminum roof. It was just a more sophisticated car, and it was the sister car to the Golf car that won in 68, 69. So that car, again, aesthetics on a GT40, you think of the fact that it got its name because it was 40 inches high, but you look at the car and proportionately it's just right. You can look at that car from any angle and it looks great. It's low, it's sleek, it's just aesthetically very pleasing. And then the fact that it won Le Mans 4 years in a row and was a 200+ mile an hour car and just dominated, and then super rare numbers. If you look at, all of the iterations from the prototypes, the Roadsters, the Mark 1s, Mark 2s, Mark 3s, Mark 4s, J cars, all iterations of those cars over that entire period, it's just over 100 cars. It's a super rare car. So people would ask, what is my favorite car? And I would ultimately say a Daytona Coupe, just because I think that it's an achievement in a period of time that can't be duplicated ever again. The fact that he won as a driver in 59 with Aston Martin, Carroll Shelby. Then he won as a manufacturer with the Daytona Coupe in 64, he won Le Mans. And then as a team owner for the GT40, it was his team that won in 66. So you'll never have a guy that won as a driver, won as a manufacturer, and won as a team owner. in a very short period of time. So that's what kind of makes the Cobra GT40 thing really interesting for me. To do all three is unheard of, and then to do it kind of as a California hot rodder is really cool. And you can see on those three cars back there, the Ken Miles prototype 427 is basically a Daytona coupe chassis. The motor in that car came out of one of the Daytona coupes. So it's a cheater house car that was built to beat the Grand Sports. After the Grand Sport, Chevrolet started cheating. They built the 5 Grand Sports to beat the Cobras, and they just threw away the rule book and cheated like crazy. So Ken Miles and Phil Remington said, well, we'll show you how to cheat. And I mean, everything about that car is different than any other Cobra on the planet. So it was the biggest, baddest Cobra they ever built. And by far the most trick car that they put together. And then the red car is the Dave McDonald car. And that's the car that did everything, sort of the first thing for Shelby. So it was the first car to win a race, first car to win a championship, first car to win with a 260, first car to win with a 289. And it evolved over the years, but we again picked what I thought was its most significant win, which was the Riverside win with Dave McDonald. And that's how we restored that car. And then the prototype GT40, which is the car just past that, did all the testing, that did all the races and stuff, but it was, again, the first cars that they used to get to a level of, obviously, the car that won Le Mans 66 and 7 and 68 and 69 are the most significant GT40s because they won Le Mans. But I think this is one of the coolest, most interesting cars just because it went from prototype, and there were 4 different noses on that car, and it just kind of evolved into something. And we're going to restore that car back to its first iteration, the way it first started racing. I don't know where Legendary is heading. It's great that my kids are involved. They love cars, they love racing. They're just as passionate as I am. So I think one of the things is having fun doing what we're doing. And I think a lot of things in life are that. And we're lucky enough to combine what I do for a living with my hobbies. Like if I didn't buy and sell cars for a living or restore them, I would still be doing it. So I'm just lucky enough to be able to do both and make a really good living doing it. And the other part is meeting really interesting people. And I find the more we do this, the people become a really big part of the car culture. And, getting to meet like-minded people that, one, love cars, love racing, love the history is always exciting. And now virtually all my friends are car guys, or I met through cars, or met through a buddy that was into cars. And it's not like there's a delineation between business and my regular life. It's just all merged together, where doing the cars as a lifestyle. And I think you'll see a lot of guys that find cars a lifestyle. And most of those guys have regular jobs that their hobby and their lifestyle is cars. They'll go on tours, they'll go racing, they'll do that. But mine, it's all integrated. There's no delineation between work and play.